Howdy. With this video, I want to go over modernism. Yeah, wasn't sure I hit start there. Want to go over modernism a little bit. Make sure you understand what's going on there. Hopefully give you a little more insight into what some of these artists are trying to do. I'm doing this video on Monday, February 18th. For tomorrow night, you're going to be reading the excerpt from our textbook, Modernity and Modernism, which does a pretty good job going over some of the major ideas as artists are finding themselves moving into the 20th century there. You're also going to be reading Marinetti's Futurist Manifesto. That's a link in D2L. It's a quirky, goofy, strange document. But it's Marinetti, one of the leading artists of his time in Italy, uh, kind of deciding, we need a new art for this new emerging world that's full of speed and movement and vibrancy and excitement. And you can kind of see it in their art. Well, not kind of, you can see it in their art. I'm just going to Google Italian Futurism art, and you'll see with some of the art just how colorful and vibrant and everything's in motion, and there's a train coming at you and airplanes flying and all this machinery and movement and excitement. You can see it in the colors and just this idea that we need a new art for this new world, and we need artists that are serious and ready to make a statement. So you're going to see that in that manifesto. That'd be a good final exercise for all students here at Northeast State. Write your manifesto before you get your degree and tell us what you're really about. But you're going to see a radical change in the art. One of my favorite ones. This is Materia by Baccioni. I think that's how you say it. It's a portrait of his mother. And you can kind of see it starting to get fragmented. That's going to be a big word with the modernists, this sense of fragmentation in the modern world. And just this excitement. There's a lot of movement in her just sitting in a chair. See the big hands coming at you. It's a fascinating piece of art to see in person too. I think I saw this at the Guggenheim. Just stared at it for almost half an hour. It's just a fascinating thing to look at. But a very different art, very exciting art. And what it's going to start leading to is this idea of cubism. All this kind of happening before World War I, or starting before World War I. A lot of people, when they talk about modernism, they talk about literature between the wars, between World War I and World War II. But many of the ideas are starting right before then, at the turn of the century. Here we're looking at some art from Pablo Picasso. And the idea of cubism, it can be a little confusing at first. And usually what I do to get students into it is kind of get them, if I'm in class with them, to draw circles and then fill those circles with people or entities that have a particular interpretation of you or who you present differently, present yourself differently to. And I've kind of done that here just roughly. But like my parents know things about me that I don't know. My father may know why I'm scared of the dark because maybe we played hide and seek and he forgot to come find me and I spent 2 hours locked in the closet somewhere while he was watching TV or something. But he's probably not going to tell me that story. He's probably going to die with that. And that's kind of what happens when our parents die. They take a part of us that we'll never know with them, right? But we have all these different relationships with different people. My wife knows things about me. My children don't. Sometimes my children might be able to tell a story about me that I don't necessarily want my wife to have. Nothing sinister, but there's been a couple times it's like, don't tell mommy we did this or we ate that or whatever. My dog has an interpretation of me. We should all be the person our dog thinks we are, right? But also within the modern age, we present ourselves on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Snapchat, on Twitter or whatever, or Instagram or whatever. Every friend you have has kind of a different interpretation of you. Northeast State has an interpretation. God has a particular interpretation of you if you're a person of faith, right? And God's version of you is much different than probably what your vision of you is, right? He hopefully sees things that you might be able to do that beyond what you're doing now. Your doctor might kind of see your body as a machine. You even have all these interpretations of yourself that may not always be. It's not a permanent kind of a situation there. One thing you're going to see in the six characters in search of an author is Pirandello kind of examining what our reality is and how it's kind of ephemeral and changes, and the you from 10 years ago won't match the you are now. Obviously, we go through changes, but when like when you were in high school, you inhabited a very concrete reality, or what you thought was a concrete reality. But when you look on back on it now, it doesn't seem all that real. It's not, and you kind of want to go tell yourself like, this isn't real, this isn't reality. But it was for you at that time. And 10 years from now, you're going to look back at yourself now and kind of think the same thing. So who we are changes. Our interpretations of ourselves changes. Freud's going to tell us that we have the subconscious that is acting sometimes again, without our not knowing it, and that affects who we are and how we see ourselves. And we can kind of see our book talking about all this fragmentation within our lives. Karl Marx is saying, hey, the way you thought the world was constructed is not true. It's all based on economics, and the evil capitalists are getting you to see the world a certain way so they can take advantage of you. Nietzsche talking, God is dead, and what happens, with those circumstances. Einstein's talking about how time can bend. It's not just this, chronological thing, and also our consciousness is not chronological. I can remember something that happened in third grade better than I can remember what I ate for dinner last week, right? We don't experience time chronologically inside our heads. So with all this fragmentation and all this question of identity and reality, along with all this excitement with the turn of the century, but also with this violent, mechanized World War I, where millions of people are killed by machines and mustard gas and all these horrifying new inventions that the futurists were kind of excited about. As modernism progresses, there's going to be a little more doubt about that level of optimism and what motivates people and how people experience the world. But you kind of draw these circles and think about them. Which one's the real you? It probably depends on at a particular time and who you're with, and it's going to become kind of an interesting question of, is there really a real you somewhere within all that, or is there just a kind of construct that you've created for that particular moment? And you're going to definitely see that in Pirandello's 6 Characters in Search of an Author. When you kind of look at the play, again, you're going to see these kinds of themes popping up. I just want to kind of point out a couple here. It's a very interesting production. It's going to have Andy Griffith, who you remember from the Andy Griffith Show. He played Sheriff Andy Taylor, and then there's Opie and Aunt Bee and all that. He's not playing that kind of character here. It's going to be a different kind of thing. But Andy Taylor from the Andy Griffith Show is kind of he's still alive, right? He's still being played on TV. That's character that's going to live forever. Whereas Andy Griffith has died, and that's one of the interesting things Pirandello is going to get into. What's more real? Who's more alive? Is this character or the actor? Very interesting. But I'm going to get into this question of perspective and fragmentation that you're going to kind of see, and also in the art of Pablo Picasso here. If you're going to paint someone's portrait, you're not just going to paint them like the realist might, as as a kind of physically impaired frame. You're gonna paint them as you kind of see them in terms of this fragmentation, this multiple perspective within one sitting, and it gets to be a kind of interesting, very complex art for a new emergently complex world. It can be a little scary sometimes, right? If you can't see someone's face and you can't recognize them right away, it can be kind of intimidating or kind of scary at first. But fascinating art, very technical art, and it's just if you're into cubism, it's just, you can just be very fascinated by the technique and the kind of vision they're having for this new world. But that hopefully we'll see some of this in some of the museums in Denmark when we go there. Some of this cubism kind of stuff, and this effect upon how the modern world's affecting art and our consciousness. But you're definitely going to see it in the play. This isn't going to be like Tartuffe, where it's just kind of things happen in a nice, neat order, and it's kind of clear what's going on. It's a confusing play sometimes. You're going to be kind of going like, what? So stop. I'm not quite sure what's happening here, because Pirandello is kind of playing with reality and our perception of it. And you're going to see in particularly some of the father's speeches. He talks about here, the very words we use, each of us has inside himself his own special world, and how can we ever understand each other? If I put the words I used and give the sense of value of the things that I have, that's going to be interpreted by someone else who may see them totally differently than the way I intended. And this is just going to start producing this concern about how do we interpret information, how do we see the world, how fragmented is it, how do we experience the world. And as you're kind of watching the play, one thing I've noticed is that the time within the play here doesn't match the
yes, him.
Well,
now,
let me do it here.
There's a scene for you to play. With the interruption.
Let me stop it. The numbers in the video don't match the ones in the transcript here. Hold on. But as you're kind of watching the play, kind of notice this question of identity. Here the father's gonna start talking about how our identity changes from moment to moment. Well, I might be this way with one person, I might be a different way with another person. I don't go home and correct my wife's English, right? Maybe I did once and learned my lesson. But our behavior and our consciousness changes very fluidly according to the father in this play. And Paradiddle is kind of getting this question of identity and how it changes and the struggle we have in maintaining certain identities, or how sometimes it's frightening to be thinking we're being judged by one particular action. Give me 1 second here. Sorry. Trying to get to one particular point in the play here towards the end. And it won't let me scroll without stopping towards the bottom, at the bottom there. Here we go. And here, this is kind of getting to a very important part of the play, where the father's talking to the director, and this won't make sense unless you started watching the play. But the father says a character may always ask a man who he is because a character has his own complete identity, his history, his memory, his will, his personality, his life, all complete, limited to his own precise existence. In other words, a character within a play or a television show or whatever is always going to do what he's going to do or she's going to do. But that's not true of human beings. Everything's very temporary and situational and in flux all the time. And he's going to start talking about, this person you were 10 years ago, was that reality then? Well, of course it was. That was your entire reality as you knew it at that time. But now that you look at yourself 10 years later, you think, wow, I've changed a lot. I don't know why I thought that was reality. My reality is right now. And of course, the father's going to say, well, in 10 years, it's not going to be. So this idea of reality is kind of an illusion, as particularly compared to a literary character, which is what the father is within this play. But kind of notice these kind of themes developing within 6 characters in search of an author. It's a funny, quirky, interesting play, but it's challenging at the same time in terms of how we see ourselves and our identity. But that's kind of what we're going to be getting into with the Modernist. The art's going to get different. That's a cool painting. I like that one. It's going to be starting getting very fragmented, very complex. These artists are taking themselves very seriously, as you're going to see with the Futurist Manifesto. And it's going to create some problems, particularly as we move into the 20th century, but also some very interesting, fascinating works that hopefully we'll get into. Hopefully we're going to see some of the stuff when we get to Denmark. That's going to be pretty exciting, I hope. But I'm going to stop there. We'll talk to you later. Be sure and let me know if you have any questions about the trip or with the work we're doing before the trip. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.